one thing that's I want to talk about biocentrism, and I think it's definitely important to state, because a lot of the time when we consider this notion of biocentrism, it becomes difficult to conceptualize because it means that it removes the free will from the individual, right? But essentially, what we should understand is that, like, it ultimately depends on the factor of the solidity of the individual's soul components, right? As to how do they come together, basically, or how do they compose themselves? Because, well, it's possible that you can trigger, like, the more belief, the more you can have people believing something about an individual, the more you can have people believing something about a holon or a group of individuals, the more force you can have an influence on them, right, on that particular individual. But in the same way that if you apply a force of heat to metal, for example, it can melt, right? But if that metal has a high level of, if it has like a high melting point, right? I don't know if that's just for ice, but if it has like a high melting point, it becomes relatively more difficult to influence it in a negative way, in a negative or positive way. It just becomes more difficult to influence it overall. And that's how the process of biocentrism kind of comes into play, into this reality. It's like defining the attributes that we can correlate with, like, for example, the melting point of an element, like what attributes of an individual ultimately translate to that is difficult to put into words for me. But I think that definitely I can feel and understand it. Um, I think it can be felt for the most part. But I think it ultimately just comes down to individual understanding and how one perceives their own soul, and also including what they perceive to be important to themselves, right? So that's one factor. Um, Now, that's one aspect of it, but I think it's definitely important to take into consideration that